You're tuned in to Inscendence on WURS Fresh and Radio, where we go in to ascend. This show is a Black queer led audio sanctuary where sound becomes shelter, storytelling supports healing, and holding spiritual integrity is the pace. I'm
Mm.
Zaire. Today I have with me my illustrious and indiscriminate best friend, retired First Sergeant LeAnn Smith, down in
Hi,
Tampa, Florida.
greetings. Thank you
Yeah,
for having me.
thanks for
It's a
being here.
pleasure.
Yeah. Today's episode is called Conditional Sanctuary and Black Queer Survival.
Mm,
And we're going to dive into the first parts of my liberal studies capstone. It's an interdisciplinary capstone. It's entitled Digital Sanctuaries: How Black Queer Folk Can Build Safety, Community, and Identity in Media Space. So, part of the project of the paper was to combine disciplinary methods. So, going through the lens of sociology, psychology, and also mass communications,
mm.
what gaps are there in research that those three, as they overlap, can reveal? So, to
Where
put
do
it
we
in,
begin?
so we're going to start with sociology.
Mm,
We're going to start today with the first part of my capstone. The problem
mm,
statement is that um, a lot of the physical spaces that Black people, particularly Black queer and trans people, occupy, are actually not safe, protective spaces because they require Black and queer trans people to hide parts of themselves, particularly the gender identity and the sexuality pieces. And based on those conditions, they will offer them protection. If they live into
Very
the other,
conditional.
yes, if they live into the identities that they're not a fan of, then you're now a threat to their own survival.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about one of those places in my research that came up as unsafe was the Black church. The Black church, because um, LeAnn had a story for us um, as an ally regarding what is she has observed
Mm.
in real life.
Yeah. You ready?
Ready?
Right. All right. So, my story takes me back to my active duty days when I was stationed in Okinawa. Um, you know, um, that was a time in my life where I was choosing to go to church. Before then, primarily it was my parents was dragging me. I went out of obligation. I went out of guilt. But my transition into Korea, my year in Korea, and then when I went to Okinawa, um, I found my spirituality in the church. So every Sunday, I would go to a church that was off base. And, it was huge for me because I would sit in the front row. And before, when I was a dragged participant, I would find myself in the back row ready to escape the first instance available. But
Hmm.
that had switched for me, and I was engaged and I wanted to learn, and I wanted to deepen my religion and spirituality. And like my living experience enticed a friend to be like, hey, I see what you're doing and I want to go to this church too. Like, you speak so highly of it.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. To caveat his segue into my story, um, he was a gay man. And I started taking him to church with me. And so we would go religiously. At this point, it was like 3 months in that he was going with
Ooh.
me every Sunday, sitting in the front row. Like, we were tithing, everyone knew our names, we were volunteering with the church. And he made that conscious decision then to want to be baptized. Like, he wanted to further his relationship with God and his religion and spirituality. And he thought he had found a safe place to do this.
Right. And that's usually what churches want, I think, too, right?
Ideally, like on
Yes.
paper, that's what we say they want. But in actuality, it really isn't. Um, so when my friend asked to be baptized, it became aware that he was living as a gay man. And I remember them calling me saying like, "Hey, we need you to come to church. Like we're having a meeting about your friend wanting to be baptized, and since you're the one who brought him here, like you need to be a part of this meeting." And I was like, "Okay." Like I've never been a part of a baptism as an adult because I was baptized when I was a child. So I didn't know
Mhm.
what happened behind the scenes. So I didn't find this unusual. I just figured it was part of the process. Um, but it wasn't, because once I got there, I quickly found out that they were very consciously aware that my friend was gay. And if he wanted to be baptized into this church, he would have to basically stand before the elders and denounce his sexuality. Like he
Mm.
would have to denounce being gay. And that was the only way that this church would even entertain the idea of baptizing him. And I was just so like taken back and confused because I'm like, I thought we were supposed to come as we were. Like, I thought that's what the whole point of this was. And the preacher of that church like looked me square in the face and said, "LeAnn, um, it's my job as the pastor to provide discernment on who gets baptized. What if I baptize this guy? What is God going to think about me in my position?"
Mm.
Like, and
Mm.
I was just taken back, like, oh, I've I never even thought to even like script this conversation in my head because I would have never thought it would happen. Like someone is being denied. You can't come to church as you are, which is the exact opposite of what they're preaching and what I was brought up understanding about church. And even my leaning into the church at this point, that's not my understanding of it. So I was really shocked.
Yeah.
And that's an inadequate word for what I was truly feeling at that moment. And I was scared, um, confused, like name it. I was feeling that emotion in that moment. Angry. And I started feeling very angry for my friend because he's standing there in front of these elders and like we're having a discussion about him as if he's not even there. So, in order for him to accept God's grace into the church, he would need to then stand in front of the entire church, like I said before, denounce that he was gay and promise to never do it again, never to be gay again. Like being gay is like turning on the light switch. Don't turn that light switch back on, young man, you know?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and but I started engaging them like, why are you making this determination? Like, if we are so worried about who God is letting in and who you are ushering through the doors to God, like, let's take a look inside your family. Because at the time, the pastor had a daughter who was pregnant. She was 15, 14, turning 15, and she was pregnant. She didn't have to stand in front of the church and have the proverbial stoning, like cast down your sins and never to promise to do it again. Um, Her being pregnant at 15 was just fine. But if we go according to what the Bible says, like we're not supposed to be having sex before marriage. So why were we expecting this gay man to denounce his sexuality, denounce his lifestyle, denounce who he is when you can bless and usher in your child having a baby at 15 and that's acceptable. Um but they were like, no, like it's our responsibility. We're not getting struck down by God for some gay man. And you know, I felt awful for my friend because he was outed.
Mm.
He was outed in the most atrocious way. Um, Like, we didn't go to that church that evening with the understanding that they knew he was gay. And it's not like we were hiding it. It's not like it was a deceptive thing. But name one person who has to walk through a church door and say, "Hi, my name's LeAnn. I'm straight. Can I come in?" Like, that's that's not a thing. And if it is, like, I've never seen it before. So to defend my friend, you know, I had to bring up my past transgressions and be like, "Look, you look at me and bless me wholly." And I was like, "You don't even know that I've had an abortion. Like, I've had an abortion. And because you didn't know that, I was accepted into your church. But now that you know that, how does that make you feel?" Like, and he's just like, "Well, it's not, you're not gay." On the scale of sin, I've committed the ultimate sin. You know what I mean? In my eyes, like, I technically have murdered someone. He's living his happy gay life. What's
Yeah.
the problem?
Mm. And
Uh,
his response was still, he was the conditional and the choosing,
It
being
was very
selective.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so unfortunately, this was during the time of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the height of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And the island that we were on in Okinawa, it seemed like there was a legitimate witch hunt to, because we knew that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was drawing down to an end. Um, it hadn't been signed yet. And so I just felt like there was this extra urgency to, like, gather them all up and kick them out before, it was legal for them to be able to be in. And essentially, that is what happened to my friend. It got back to his command that he was a gay man. And, in the military, you have to show potential and aptitude to maintain, to stay in the military. You have to gain rank to stay in the military, and you have to hit these certain markers by a certain juncture in your tenure in order for you to be able to stay. So let's say he was an E6, we both were E6s. And so that meant, under that condition, we were allowed to be able to stay in the service for 20 years, which will get us to retirement. Um, but E5 and below had to get out at 15 years, which would then deny them the opportunity to retire. And his command did find out, and they took his rank, which then slid him from being able to stay into 20 to, he's now over 15. He has to get out immediately. And so, like, my friend lost his faith, his job. He lost everything.
Mm.
And I felt so guilty about it. I still feel guilty about it, um, because I champion myself as an ally. Like, I will fight and defend for you, defend you, because sexuality is not the cursor for whether or not you're a good person or a bad person. And if it is, then we need to take a hard stance on even what straight sexuality looks like, because we're the offenders. And I say we very loosely, but the straight community is the offender of most of the deviant sexual crimes that happen.
Right.
Um, uh,
It's a lot. It's a whole lot.
the emotions are just all coming back again. Like, I just still can't believe that happened. Also, another thing about the church, and, like, them being discerning who gets to get to the gates of heaven and see God. The interesting thing about all of it is that one of their, like, elders in the church was molesting kids in the church.
Mm.
Yeah.
Back
So
to
they
being
have an
selective. Yeah.
yep, they have an actual predator amongst them, and they're like, but he's not
Yeah.
gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was sad.
And it sounds like it was all social conditions too. Like you didn't know it was going to happen. It shocked you.
Oh, I was
You
completely
wasn't
blown
expecting that.
away. That was the last day I voluntarily stepped foot in a church. Like, that's when I realized that it was a complete farce. Like, n- there is no heaven. No one's going to heaven if this is how we are conditioning people to get there. Like, it's not real. It can't be real, because if there was a God and he has his shepherds, like the shepherd with his sheep, he doesn't look at the weak sheep and be like, you don't get to come and see God. No, they're like, we'll wait for you.
Hmm.
The herd will wait for you. And i I think I just always had that idea of like ministers, preachers, like being shepherds. And like, he just culled half of his flock just by determining one single social factor, not even the important ones. Like, the child molester amongst your ranks had more grace than a person living their life within their own sexuality.
So this could be one of the many reasons that research is showing that we know people are leaving the church, but in particular, there's research by Lorenzo Bowman. He writes in a study in is a study. This is 2021.
Mm,
He's talking about because of the way some social conditions have changed. For example, when gay marriage became legalized, it showed
mhm.
that attitudes were moving in favor of queer folk and rights, civil rights. Um, that the black church, for example, was behind those conditions, but the people weren't behind. People have been leaving the church. And there's a statistic in here that says 41% of African American millennials don't identify with the church. Um,
Yeah,
it's just a phenomenon as a result of this hatred and again conditional ways of wanting people to behave. Yeah, yeah.
it's disgusting. Like, um like the first time that I voluntarily stepped back into a church, and while I was still active duty, like, we have to understand that there are ceremonies that happen within the chapel, but that doesn't mean that it's a spiritual or religious event. It's just the space that it's happening. It's an available space for the active duty member to either like hold a retirement ceremony,
Mhm.
um, whatever event that may be coming up. And if like the community center is closed, or uh yeah, the church has annexes that you're able to utilize for social spaces. So, like, yes, I did step back into those spaces while I was active duty, but the first time that I willingly went to a church was just last year, and that was when my grandmother died. And like, if that didn't happen, I still wouldn't have stepped foot into a church, and I haven't since then either, because I see the fallacy in men and their judgment of people, and um, their inability to be open minded and accepting of all people.
So where do you
Oof.
find your safe space?
I find my safe space in the things that I can see. Like, I find spirituality in nature. Like, I believe in the sun. I believe in the trees. I believe in the wind that blows through the leaves. Like, I believe the things that I can see. And nature, while Mother Nature, um, her wrath can be real,
Mhm.
um, I find comfort and love despite that in nature. I've never been rejected for the color of my skin in nature. I've never been rejected by nature for my sexuality or my sexual orientation or my gender. Like when I go into nature, that's when I feel what I think is God. And it's definitely not coming from some man behind a pulpit who has an agenda, which typically is meant to oppress women and shame us. And uh, I can't get down with that anymore.
Good for you. Good for you. And this is what
Thank you.
also the research was showing, that people aren't putting up with it anymore. They are leaving, as we've said. Yeah, I just all I wanted to say was I thank you for sharing your stories candidly with us, because what I wanted to prove by doing the podcast is that even though it's one story, it's still a story of truth from a person who has these experiences, who has witnessed it, what the research is saying, and that these stories aren't exceptions. They're actually patterns, and they show us what conditional sanctuary feels like from the inside. It's not just about being like rejecting people. Um, it's about people also trying to figure out, well, once I've seen this has happened to me, how am I going to adapt and how am I going to survive and negotiate the space, or
Mhm.
move on to new and more free space that doesn't make
Well,
me choose the parts of me that can be
no,
here.
I also feel that life is already hard enough as it is. Like just
Mm,
merely existing, it's already difficult. Why would you subject yourself to a space with people who is going to judge you, shame you, make you feel guilt for your life, which is another added layer of torture that we don't need. Like life is torturous enough.
it is. It is. It is. Well, as we'll close, I'll just say that for Black, queer, and trans people, um, for all people, survival should have never been about choosing one identity over another.
Mm,
Um, and yet it has been about learning how to move through spaces that were never built to fully hold us.
mm.
Conditional sanctuary is not imagined, it's felt deeply, um, if not contained inside our bodies. So, with that, thank you, LeAnn Smith, for being with us today, for sharing your life experience, particularly as an advocate of advocates. I look forward to talking with you again.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, Zaire.
Thank you. This has been Inscendence, where sound is sanctuary. If you want to go deeper, tune in to the next mini-series episode where we will continue discussing this selection by selection, this capstone, continuing with sonic sanctuaries, finding home and voice. If you'd like to read the paper, please explore my e-portfolio at zaire.weebly.com. Thank you for spending some time. Take good care of you. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.